The greatest threat to the safety of motorcycle riders are intersections. The dreaded intersection creates a perfect storm to introduce risk to riders. You've got multiple roads crossing one another, countless vehicles headed in every direction, and a misunderstanding of who has the right of way. And then there's you, the small, lonely motorcyclist, diminutive in size compared to cars, unable to be seen during the fleeting glance of a driver takes for just a moment before turning out onto the road in front of you. Intersections are inherently unpredictable, with vehicles turning, stopping, and yielding or failing to do so. The combination of these variables introduces chaos and risk to everyone on the road, but especially motorcyclists. For those on motorcycles, an intersection is even more hazardous because their smaller size makes them harder to see, more likely to be misjudged either in terms of speed or distance as well. One of the most common scenarios that puts a motorcycle rider in physical danger is when a car makes a left-hand turn across their path. In many cases, the car driver either fails to see the motorcycle altogether or incorrectly assumes they have enough time to complete the turn before the bike arrives. Even if a car driver does see a motorcyclist, the rider, more often than not, might be going a little bit quicker than the driver realizes. This is why we say to never speed through an intersection. If a driver doesn't see you or misjudges your speed or distance, it often results in the motorcyclist slamming into the side of the vehicle with little to no time to react. Unlike car drivers who have the protection of seatbelts, airbags, and, well, walls, motorcyclists are exposed, and even low-speed impacts at intersections can have terrible consequences. You don't really slide out much in an intersection, you just have all that force transmitted into you, which really sucks. To decrease the risk of danger when riding in intersections, motorcyclists need to treat every approach with the understanding of potential danger, regardless of whether or not they have the right of way. I see so many videos online where people just assume they have the right of way and they get clobbered in an intersection. Just ride defensive, assume you never have the right of way, because you can't assume that as a motorcyclist. There's the old adage that might is right on the road and the big fish usually wins. When you're on a motorcycle, you're the little fish. You gotta flow with the path. Slowing down slightly when nearing an intersection, especially when a vehicle is waiting to turn across your path, can allow you extra reaction time. If you come to an intersection and clock a car that's waiting to turn across your path, be prepared to make an emergency stop, not only by approaching at a slower speed, but covering your brake lever in case you need to react quickly and having an escape path. Scanning for subtle cues such as driver wheels, turning their head moving quickly as they check in traffic can signal that that turn is coming. Ultimately, it's about riding defensively and assuming that because others on the road might not see you, many intersection crashes happen not because of malicious intent. Nobody wants to kill a guy on a motorcycle, but because drivers simply don't register bikes in their field of vision. By being proactive and never trusting that you're seen or have the right of way, motorcyclists could significantly reduce their chances of experiencing a collision with another vehicle. The second greatest cause of crashes is loss of control, also known as an excess of yeet energy. These are single vehicle accidents, the embarrassing ones where you just ride off the side of the road or you low side chasing your buddies, meaning the responsibility is solely on the rider and the misuse of their machine, not due to negligence of another vehicle. A crash like this is due to a loss of control, and it can be caused by a myriad and variety of factors, usually all combined together. Improper rider inputs, poor road conditions, or a combination of any. Unlike cars where you can be half asleep, blind in one eye, looking at your phone, yelling at your kids in the back seat, and still manage to get from point A to point B safely with any luck, motorcycles are much less tolerant of bad decisions or technique. There's a lot less room for overcorrection or second-guessing yourself when you're leaned over in a corner or braking hard. Riders lose control of their bikes in a variety of ways. They can enter a turn with too much speed and run wide off the road, or they can grab too much front brake and wash out the front end. Or they can just use too much throttle, which breaks the rear tire loose, creating a loss of traction. Or they can just come across some gravel in a turn and they weren't anticipating it. Regardless of what situation a rider might find themselves in, for the most part, these types of single vehicle crashes are entirely preventable. They're a combination of incorrect speed, improper input, or both. Riders need to respect the limits of their skills and approach new roads and corners with patience and reverence. Trying to keep up with bigger bikes or push the limits of your machine without having the proper skill set or training is a one-way ticket to a crash. Patience and building the proper habits are essential for avoiding situations like this. Approach corners with caution, being mindful of your entry speed before entering the turn, maintain smooth throttle input while looking forward through the turn towards the exit, pursue advanced rider courses to further hone those skills to understand the limits of traction, and to get closer to throttle and brake mastery. At the very least, to avoid a crash due to a loss of control, be cautious, be patient, use good judgment and common sense, and build good habits from proper training. Unsafe lane changes are another big threat to motorcyclists. Unlike dramatic intersection collisions, an improper lane lane change can seem somewhat innocuous can have just as devastating consequences for a rider. The root cause of the problem is visibility. Cars keep getting larger and larger, yet motorcycles are still small. Shrinking into that void is the blind spot of a Toyota Tundra, the truck having been noted by Consumer Reports as having the worst visibility due to its large pillars and wide headrests. The more you know. If a driver isn't actively checking their mirrors and actually turning their head to check the lane before switching over, a motorcycle can be easily missed. And while most motorcyclists try to avoid being in vehicles' blind spots at all times, there will be just even a temporary moment in which you find yourself in one. And all it takes is an incredibly ill-timed lane change from another vehicle to have devastating consequences. Many drivers are conditioned to look for cars and trucks, not bikes, and they rely too heavily on mirrors or blind spot monitoring systems rather than physically turning their head before changing lanes. Add in distractions like texting, TikTok, a backseat full of kids that won't stop screaming because their iPad battery died, and it becomes clearly quick how a motorcyclist can be sideswiped by a driver who just simply didn't see them. To reduce the risk of being taken out by a lane change, motorcyclists need to remember the age-old adage and ride like they're invisible, because more often than not, they are. No matter how loud your straight-piped exhaust is, no matter how many rally lights you have on your GS, you gotta avoid lingering in blind spots for more than a second or two, because that's all it takes for an ill-timed lane change from a car to ruin your day and or life. If you're alongside a car's rear quarter panel, either speed up to get in front or back off to stay clearly visible. This scenario also reinforces the importance of lane position when it comes to visibility. Kind of goes back to the thing I've told you guys in traffic. You got to make progress through these cars. You don't want to just sit in between a bunch of cars because you never know what they're going to do. Make space for yourself, create a buffer. It also reinforces the need to always be scanning for signs that allow you to predict the behavior of other vehicles on the road as well. Rear-end collisions might not be the most deadly or serious accident involving two cars, but being rear-ended on a motorcycle can be absolutely deadly. When a car rear-ends another, the result is usually a dented bumper and maybe a little bit of whiplash depending on how good your traffic lawyer is. But the same impact on a motorcycle can be devastating. Motorcycles don't have bumpers, crumple zones, or airbags, though airbag vests do exist, and I very much advocate for their use to increase your safety on your bike. Just a little helpful tip from your old Papa Yam. These types of collisions usually happen at stoplights, in slow-moving traffic, or during sudden braking scenarios. It's sad because these types of accidents are almost always preventable and usually solely at the result of inattention on the part of the driver. You got distracted drivers following too close, and misjudging how much more quickly a motorcycle can come to a stop. Motorcycles are smaller, lighter, and yet they have very powerful brakes in combination with engine braking. This is great if you need to suddenly stop to avoid an obstacle, but it can catch a vehicle behind you off guard who are then unable to stop in time to avoid collision. Also, most people have no idea how much brake they can actually use. They actually did a study of this a while back where a lot of people who ended up rear-ending somebody didn't achieve 100% brake pressure. They sat around like 50 to 60%. Being rear-ended is scary because there's less you can do as a rider to prevent it from happening, though it's not entirely helpless. When coming to a stop, keep your bike in gear and keep your eyes on your mirrors to see oncoming vehicles approaching from the rear. This can allow you the opportunity to accelerate and get out of the way should they not be stopping quickly enough. But I will say this is a bit of an unrealistic thing to think about, and you should just be positioned in the lane where you can have an escape path to evade incoming cars. My preferred activity with this one is if you filter to the front of a red light where people are already stopped, there's basically no chance you're going to get rear-ended. So lane filtering to me is an opportunity to get rid of the possibility of getting rear-ended. You should leave some space ahead of you when you go to stop as well, so you're not stuck up against another car's bumper with nowhere to go. Again, if you filter up to the front, there's nobody in front of you. But look, Yami Noob and all affiliates are not responsible for any scolding you may receive from a police officer who pulls you over for filtering in a state where it's not permitted by law. Rider discretion is advised. And lastly, impaired drivers or motorcyclists are another massive danger for your safety. Of course, being run down by an intoxicated driver of the new toddler cruncher F250 is a sort of unpredictable danger. Unlike a busy intersection or a tight corner, there aren't a ton of warning signs that a driver is impaired or heavily fatigued or distracted. Motorcycles are already less visible on the road, and when a driver's attention is compromised, you become even more vulnerable. When a driver is intoxicated or distracted, their behavior becomes even harder to predict, negating much of your defensive ability. They might fail to yield, or run a stop sign or a stoplight, or make an erratic movement, cutting you off in your lane. But there's also a huge responsibility on motorcycle riders to stay of sound mind when riding as well. Many studies show that in many fatal motorcycle accidents, specifically single vehicle crashes, the rider themselves is under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Motorcycling requires the balance of fine motor skills, gross motor skills, and perception. Intoxication or impairment has a direct correlation to diminished ability in all of those realms. Your reaction time's slower, your ability to judge distance is negatively affected, and your brake and throttle inputs may become abrupt or choppy, leading to instability or loss of control. And as bikes and motorcycle accessories become more advanced, make it a point to reduce possible distractions as well. Don't fiddle with your phone on the handlebar mount or deep dive into the traction control settings on your TFT dash while stopped in traffic, or zone out entirely while you have the latest episode of some podcast playing in your Cardo headset. Riding a motorcycle demands a full concentration, and there isn't really any sort of safety net or backup plan if something goes wrong. And while you can't control those around you, you can do the best to anticipate hazards, scan for erratic behavior, and avoid riding during high-risk times or in high-risk areas. While the road is unpredictable, your best defense is riding clear-headed, alert, and in control. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, why don't you go ahead and subscribe to the channel? Things are really ramping up as riding season is underway, and you're not going to want to miss what we've got cooking over here at Yami Noob. We've got new monthly giveaway bikes, new content formats, and a whole lot of fun stuff in the pipeline. Subscribing will ensure that you do not miss a beat. Thanks again for watching. I will see you later. Fact: Roman Emperor Caligula once tried to appoint his horse Incitatus as consul, complete with a marble stall, servants, and royal robes to mock the Senate's authority. Goodbye.
Keep watching Yami Noob!